what the fuck is this bitch doing? Is that okay? Can you do that? Is she going to go blind? You get a life. My God, don't be so boring. Morgoth in those days was like one of the greatest insults you could give a goth. Hissing at passers-by. Like, it's cringe as, but it also sounds so fun. This floor full of goths would erupt into more chaos, anarchy and joy than you had seen for the rest of the night. There is so much room for mischief in the goth subculture. So hello, you wonderful citizen of cyberspace, and welcome to a video that was suggested on Instagram talking about the goth scene fashions of the early 2000s. And the first thing I would like to jump into is a bit of a clarification on terms. Because although I've said this before, and I know other people have said this before, it has clearly gotten lost in time again. Because Morgoth. Morgoth has become like the height of 90s, 2000s goth cool. Like, people are trying to do the Morgoth look. And I've seen pictures of myself, such as this one and this one, like Pinterested under Morgoth eyeliner, which I have no idea if that is meant as a compliment or simply a statement of fact, but my 16-year-old self would have been fucking horrified, because Morgoth in those days was like one of the greatest insults you could give a goth. Less so in England, because Morgoth wasn't so much a thing in England because of the fact that we have never had Hot Topic in this country. If you wanted to buy off Hot Topic, and people did buy off Hot Topic in the UK, but you had to buy it from America and pay a whack load of shipping. So our malls, like, you didn't really get goths hanging out in malls because there was nowhere to go for goths in a mall. Like, you had Claire's Accessories, Boots, for makeup. That was it. So Morgoth wasn't so much a thing here, but in America, Morgoth was very much a thing, and it was something that most of the goth scene did not want to be associated with in any way, shape or form, because like the term baby bat too, the term baby bat used to be something of an insult because it was so much cooler to be experienced and jaded and older. So if you were seen as a baby bat, you were like new and naive and you didn't know stuff, and that wasn't cool. So that was the only reason that baby bat was kind of a bit of a slight. But like, yeah, you had baby bats, and baby bats were trying to learn. Baby bats were like actual goths, but they were just young, naive, getting into it goths. Whereas Morgoth, a Morgoth was not a fucking goth, basically was what was being suggested by that. That I remember so many times in the early 2000s having to really think through my clothing choices because I didn't want to like give Morgoth. And I had some hoodies that were like hand-me-downs from my eldest brother, which one of my fuckhead boyfriends stole, and I no longer have, and they were like classics, and I'm still pissed about that, like, 9 years later. Anyway, one of them was like a classic Korn hoodie, one of them was a Cradle of Filth hoodie. Did I have a Deftones hoodie? Maybe I did. So I had all these like new metal band. I mean, I suppose they'd be seen as like fairly classic now, but in those days it was new metal, and new metal was again seen in quite a slighted way. Like bands like Korn, Limp Bizkit, Deftones, all of that kind of stuff, Papa Roach, System of a Down, anything that was kind of new metal-y. The metal scene shat on it, the goth scene shat on it. It was kiddie music. It's become so much cooler, and I like that because I like this music. I like looking back. Because I had these hoodies, these new metal hoodies, if I ever wore them, I would deliberately pair them with like a Sisters of Mercy t-shirt or a Bauhaus t-shirt, Dream Disciples t-shirt, something like that. So I had like an actual goth band t-shirt with my new metal hoodie, so that there was something about me that screamed proper goth rather than just looking like a Morgoth. Or worse, there was the Mansonite, the spooky kid, which was basically someone who claimed to be a goth, but all they were into was Marilyn Manson. And I know these days there's a lot more discourse around, you know, Marilyn Manson's influence on the goth scene and all of that shit. But back in the day, it was like, no, this dude is not goth. He does not sound anything like the goth music of the time. He seems to be in it to just stir up controversy and say whatever will stir up the most controversy at any given time. And although he's a very intelligent guy, this kind of deliberately shit-stirry attitude that he had didn't really, like, it was I feel like a bit more confrontational, and I don't know how to put it, but it wasn't really the vibe of the older goth scene, which was more philosophical, more art-based, more literature-based, more mature than Marilyn Manson in the 90s, early 2000s. And the people who were really drawn to Marilyn Manson in those days, so this is leading back to the Morgoth eyeliner thing. I would not say that this was Morgoth eyeliner. This was basically your average, fairly young goth wearing makeup, because there were no makeup tutorials in those days. So although you did get goths who had really gorgeous makeup, and there's an example I really want to use here. There's someone I used to know who I have a picture with from Whitby Gothic Weekend 2001, and she looks, I look like a clown, and she looks stunning, but I don't want to just like throw her whole face on the thing. But if I can like cut out one of her eyes maybe and just show you her gorgeous eye makeup or something, maybe, because oh my god. But she was, I don't know how many years older than me she was probably about 30 by then. So, and you know, even without makeup tutorials, you do get better at learning what suits you, you get better at blending, you get better at stuff. So the older goths did have some pretty good makeup, some of them. There were older goths who had never got the hang of it because no makeup tutorials, but younger goths, we had no one to teach us jack shit, so all of our makeup looked like that. Even simple things like using a brush to blend with rather than a foam pad, that went completely over our head. No, we used a foam pad for everything. So there was no blending. This is crazy, but I didn't even learn that you could put eyeliner on your waterline until I was well into my 20s. And that was from a makeup tutorial. I was watching this makeup tutorial. She does all the stuff, and I'm like, yeah, okay, this is good. Oh, she's blending with the brush. Wow, I'm learning. And then she fucking pulls down her eye and she starts drawing inside her eye. And I'm thinking, what the fuck is this bitch doing? Is that okay? Can you do that? Is she going to go blind? What is this? And then I tried it for myself, and I was like, oh my god, this is why my eyeliner always looked so fucky like my whole life, because I was always just like drawing around my eye. I don't know, it was kind of a vibe. It made my eyes look really big, but yeah, so I basically no young goth basically had decent makeup in those days. Actual Morgoth makeup would have been a lot more inspired by Marilyn Manson and The Crow. Like Morgoth makeup of the time, it was much more attention-seeky, and there are still people I see doing this kind of makeup to this day. And I don't want to name anyone because I don't want to sound like I'm trying to start shit by basically saying it's kind of an outward portrayal of angst, and it's an outward attention-seeking beacon. It's less about aesthetics and more about how extreme can I make this to get as much attention on me as possible. And I do just want to jump in here to add something that is going to be a controversial take, but unfortunately I have been proven right about this on numerous occasions, and that is to say that if you ever encounter an adult who is on a frequent basis still rocking this very threatening looking Marilyn Manson aesthetic with their makeup, please do not hand that person your trust too easily. I'm not talking about stage makeup. I'm not talking about, oh, this is what I do when I go to the club on a weekend. That is a whole different ball game and is usually completely fine. And I'm certainly not talking about children and teenagers, because for them, when they pick up this Marilyn Manson aesthetic, Often it's just a sign that they are really going through something. They're being bullied and they're trying to look as threatening as possible as a means of protection to get people away from them. They need therapy. They need love. They will probably calm down and grow out of it to some extent. But when it is an adult who is making the near daily decision to look as attention-seeking and as threatening as they possibly can through the medium of makeup of all things, in my experience, this tends to be a result of aggression, insecurity, and attention seeking, which is a horrible clusterfuck of personality traits to have in one body. And like I say, there have been numerous occasions that people like this have crossed my path, and all the younger people in the alternative scene have automatically placed their trust in this person because they've gone, wow, they've got a really wild, out there, cool aesthetic. They must be a wild, out there, cool person. I have picked up on this vibe that no, this person is not good. And shortly afterwards, it will come out that, yeah, they're a raging douche canoe and should be avoided at all costs. And obviously all generalizations are false, including this one. There will be some Marilyn Manson aesthetic folk out there who are absolutely lovely, but you do have to take what a person is giving you and read into it sometimes when it comes to their username, when it comes to the way they style themselves, and when they are trying to look so aggressive and so attention-seeking all the time as an adult is not fun to be around or even safe to be around in some cases. Like say, controversial take, but I just wanted to get that in there because it has happened so many fucking times. And that was another thing that was not liked about Morgoths, was just the very childish behaviour in malls that has been wonderfully documented on a website. I don't know if this website is still up there actually, because apparently the owner of the website did pass away a few years ago. But it was a treasure trove of 90s, 2000s cringe goth moments. Basically, Morgoths, they would be in the mall hissing at passers-by. They would be in McDonald's pretending to bite their girlfriend and using ketchup packets to look like she was bleeding. There would be all these shenanigans, which, to be fair, looking back, I'm kind of sad in a way that I didn't get to live this kind of childish Morgoth experience. It is one of those things that you don't realise for a long time when you're younger and you're in an age gap relationship. Even if that age gap relationship is really good, the way mine was, you don't fucking realise you are still missing out on your youth when you are fucking hanging around with people who are 5 to 10 years older than you and you're a teenager. This is a tangent, but I dropped out of college at 16 basically because I had somewhere to go. I had a place, a bolt hole with my boyfriend at the time, so I bailed. And if I hadn't have known him, if I hadn't have met him in the spring of that year, I still would have been super excited to go to college, and I would have been so jazzed at meeting goth friends my own age, which I did at college. Shout out to Faith if she's still out there anywhere and she still remembers anything about any of it. So I abandoned all of those kids because I moved fucking across the West Midlands to go live with Ash because we were so fucking codependent, basically. So I missed out on the experience of being like a naive goth teenager with other naive goth teenagers and having silly goth parties where people get so drunk they throw up all over the place and their parents have to clean it up. And all these quintessential teenage experiences I didn't get to have because of jumping in with an older crowd so young. You miss out on so much fucking stuff. So like looking back on all these things I see online about the behaviour of Morgoths in the 90s and early 2000s, like it's cringe as fuck, but it also sounds so fun. Like in the days before cringe was such a big thing, and before it was like, oh my god, cringe, you can't have any fun, it's cringe. You know, no one cared about being cringe in those days. The word edgelord had not been created, and that must have been such a fun era to be young in. And I didn't really get to be young in that era because of jumping in with an older crowd. But anyway, that is basically the summary of the whole Morgoth, Mansonite, spooky kid, like things you didn't want to be called as a goth. Basically, you just didn't. So the Morgoth aesthetic moving down from the head, clothing wise, it was basically Hot Topic has vomited all over you, was the Morgoth aesthetic, because of the fact, they were hanging around in malls. They weren't really into the DIY or die side of gothic fashion. It was all about what you could buy at the mall. And this was another element of hate on the Morgoths, I think, was that they weren't buying anything unique and they weren't creating anything unique. Yeah, they were just buying it off the rack. And that was very frowned on at the time, more so than it is now, because obviously these days there is a fucking wealth of amazing gothic clothes that you can get, and you don't even have to go to like a big retailer or like one of these high-end brands. That there's enough small businesses. Because of that, I think it's less of a stigma if you're not making your own clothes. But because in the 90s to 2000s, basically your two styles of gothic clothing outside of the Morgoth genre, you had your PVC dominatrix wear, which you may literally have got at a Schmeck shop, and you had your long swoopy black velvet stuff, and you were allowed two other colours. You could have red, you could have purple, and obviously you got black. And that was your colour palette for fucking everything you would find in the shops in those days, unless you were cybergoth, in which case the rules did not apply and there was much more of a rainbow for you. But yeah, because like off the rack clothing in those days was so visibly off the rack because there wasn't much of it. You could see it was off the rack. You could really tell when people were putting in an effort and were making their own clothes and were really doing their own style and all of that. So I think the weirdest thing I ever made, and I'm so pissed that I don't have this anymore, but the weirdest thing I ever made was a belt made out of UV, like blacklight reactive shot glasses. Because the goth club I went to, there was a lot of blacklight and all the shot glasses glowed under the blacklight. So I started stealing them. They were like plastic anyway, and I started stealing them. And then me and my boyfriend at the time, we heated this skewer and we started making holes and chopping up these like glowing shot glasses, stringing them together. So I had this belt of glowing shot glasses, and I fucking loved that thing. It was weird as shit and I loved it, and I don't know why I got rid of it. I still have one of my glowing shot glasses that never got mutilated, but I don't have my belt anymore, and I'm so sad about that. But yeah, so the Morgoths didn't make stuff, they bought stuff, and that was another thing that people didn't like. And the aesthetics of Hot Topic at the time were, then it was all about the trip pants and all about the big baggy chains and all of that kind of stuff. So Hot Topic did serve some pretty cool stuff if you were in the UK, because obviously not many people had it here. So if you'd like shipped it over from the US, it was quite rare, and not that many people, I mean, well, you did see trip pants everywhere, but like different ones. You would not turn up to a club and see someone wearing the same trip pants as you. That was not going to happen in the UK because it was so rare to have all that stuff from America. Whereas in America, you could end up looking like a clone brigade quite easily if you were shopping at Hot Topic for everything. And I just wanted to add in here, I did not hate on the Morgoth aesthetic for what it looked like, and I don't think many people did. I think actually a lot of us really loved the trip pants and everything strung with chains and the bondage trousers and the like graphic t-shirts with like vampire and mistress written across them, which I owned both of those things and I loved them. This is my favourite pair of trip pants at an ED forum meetup in 2004. I actually still own these trousers. They are freaking tiny. There's no way my middle-aged ass is ever going to fit into them again, but I wore them everywhere. They are so special to me. And if I had have been able to walk into a Hot Topic with my own feet, I would have been in heaven and I would have gone apeshit, and I probably would have bought half the shop and had a very Morgoth aesthetic myself. It was only the fact that you couldn't get that shit here that forced me towards more of a DIY or die kind of individual gothy aesthetic. And numerous of my friends, and myself included, we were devastated when Hot Topic just suddenly switched up their aesthetic round about 2008. Suddenly it was all about skinny blue jeans and these pastel yellow Care Bear t-shirts and stuff. I don't know what the fuck happened. Maybe it was the MySpace era and scene coming along, and it just flushed all of that Morgoth aesthetic down the toilet. And maybe that is why people romanticize it so much, because it's become this unattainable glimpse of a pastime you can't get back to. And that has made it quite goth again, because the reason people hated this shit, it wasn't what it looked like. It was the fact that it was so accessible. And if you and your friends were all shopping at the same store, you could end up looking like you were wearing a uniform and conforming to non-conformity, which is like the antithesis of what people want to be doing with their style with goth. The whole politics of trying not to look like you're wearing a goth uniform, but also trying to express yourself as a goth. It is a tightrope walk that I have made numerous videos about over the years. And the final thing I wanted to throw in here, I actually found this picture the other day of my last day at school. And this is really classic kind of Morgothy makeup. I would say most Morgoths would have gone even more angsty and over the top with it. But the painted on crow style tears were quite a Morgothy thing. And my reason for doing them was also quite Morgothy and immature, because I just wanted to take the piss out of the kids who were like so sad about school being over, like, oh my god guys, we're never gonna see this place and we're never gonna see each other again. And I was like, are you shitting me, man? I could not be happier to be out of this hellhole that has made my life a misery for the past 5 years. I'm amazed I survived. You guys are crying about it. I'm going to take the piss with painted on fake tears, which looking back is quite immature, because for the guys who had a good time at school, it was the end of an era. They were losing all their friends. They were losing a big chunk of their youth. And that was quite sad. But for me, I was like, nah, fuck you. This is ridiculous. I'm going to paint my silly, sarcastic tears on. And, so yeah, I think all young goths had a streak of Morgoth in them to an extent. So moving on to the clothing styles of the kind of actual goths who you would see in clubs and all of that stuff, the older ones. There was a really big divide, I feel like, in the kind of clothing you would see depending on the age range of the goth you were looking at, because it was so hard to get really nice gothy clothing. Like, generally speaking, it was little tiny boutiques, like a one-woman boutique making this gorgeous stuff. So it was pricey. So your average goth who was under the age of about 23 was not going to own that shit. It was all going to be basically stuff from your local goth emporium, because most big cities in those days did have some sort of goth emporium that you could go to and you could get clothes, but they would be quite kind of basic velvet or basic PVC. But then your slightly older goths in their late 20s, early 30s, they tended to look really spectacular. And again, I would love to throw in some photos from Whitby Gothic Weekend 2001, but I don't want to just like blast random people all over the internet. So I'm not going to do that. But I will say that you would see a lot of rubber, a lot of really gorgeous like figure hugging rubber. You would see latex. You would see interesting like metal things, like shaped metal things. I've got my picture of my bizarre outfit that I modelled at a fetish fashion show when I was considerably underage to even be in the club. And I'm so gutted I never got to take that thing home, because it was bizarre looking. It was so bizarre looking. The whole stage show, that like it was all this metal spiky weird shit. And you would sometimes see similar sorts of pieces out and about. On guys, you used to see a lot of those like vest, like reactive plastic patches on them, if you know what I mean. Armor patching of this UV reactive plastic you would see on the goths who were slightly more cyber leaning dudes. Because the other thing to mention is blacklight. There was so much blacklight in clubs in the early 2000s, and who the fuck took our blacklight away? Where did it go? Because you just don't see it anymore. Like, you go to clubs now, and I don't remember the last time I was in a goth club and I was like, holy shit, I'm glowing like a fucking glowworm. That hasn't happened to me in decades, and I find it so sad. One of my kind of things that I really loved and simultaneously hated in the early 2000s was this glow-in-the-dark mascara I had. Like, anything that I could get that would glow in the dark and that would glow under black light, grabby hands, I wanted it. But this glow-in-the-dark mascara, it went on kind of like bluey green. So in daylight, it looked kind of fucky because your lashes were kind of pale and it just didn't look good. But under a black light, it looked fucking spectacular. Everything glowed and it was wonderful. So I was quite leaning towards that. Oh God, and speaking of things that glowed under black light, how can I mention 90s, early 2000s goth fashion without talking about hair falls? Hair falls were like big canakalon braid hair, like fake plastic hair that you would get, and you could get it in any color under the sun. You could get it in different like mixed colors. You could get ones that glowed. You could get ones that changed color under the black light or under the sun. And you would either take this massive ball of hair, this long bunch of hair, and you would just strap it to some sort of bit of tights or something, and you would bolt it onto your pigtail so you had these big fluffy long ponytails, or you would like dreadlock all the fake hair and you would have like a big load of dreadfuls, and as in dread fall, not dreadful. So and Rex lace as well, like this plastic spaghetti lacing that you can still get from craft shops and stuff. You would often like throw some of that in with your dreadlocks, so you had these like plastic bits sprouting out of everywhere. It weighed a fucking ton, and horrible for the environment, but no one really thought about that back then. So yeah, you'd have all this big crazy hair that would often glow under the blacklight too, and that was quite fun, because I don't think there were so many hair dyes that glowed under blacklight. It was harder to have like your natural hair glowing. There were some, but it was harder. But this fake hair glowed like crazy if you went for the right shades that glowed. So that was a big part of things. And also leaning on the glows under blacklight cybergoth end of things, Dane Clubwear was probably the biggest brand in debatably goth fashion, certainly cybergoth fashion. Like Dane tops, it's hard to find pictures of them now, which is so weird because they were everywhere, to the point that they started to look really dated, and that's I think why they went out of fashion. It was like this stretchy, I never owned any because it was quite expensive and it wasn't really my style, but it was this stretchy material with these sort of tribal black prints on it. And it was a very distinctive look. As I say, it was so distinctive that round about, I don't know, about 2008 to 2010, it started looking dated and people stopped wearing it, and now it's fucking disappeared. And I should probably mention, while talking about cybergoth, that the definition of a cybergoth was also rather different, because obviously goth music had not, I don't know if diversified is the right word, because I don't know if goth music really has diversified or whether it has just changed its pie chart. You know, like in the early 2000s, the pie chart of goth was still pretty evenly split between trad goth and cyber, whereas now the fucking pie chart of new goth music, I feel like is at least three, certainly in Europe, is at least 3/4 industrial and EBM and future pop compared to trad goth. So these days, people don't chuck around cybergoth like it's some kind of like dirty insult, or like you're some sort of lesser goth or something, because I think if you did that, you would write off fucking 95% of the European goth scene if you banished everyone whose favorite genre was industrial and EBM. But back in the early 2000s, bands like Covenant and Apoptygma and even VMV Nation to a degree were kind of seen as cybergoth bands. They weren't really seen as proper goth bands, they were seen as cybergoth bands, and they've moved, you know, the same way that industrial has moved more into acceptance with what is goth and all of this. But yeah, so cybergoth was kind of more niche. Like, although the music, I feel like, you know, being bands like VMV, Covenant, fucking Apop, all the rest of it, they were some of the most popular bands of the time. The kids who were really into the cyber thing were very, very distinctive. Like, there wasn't so much the really stereotypical cybergoth look yet, I don't think. Like, you saw a bit of it, but it wasn't so commonplace to see, you know, the big colourful black and one colour dreadfuls and the little kind of A-line skirt and a corset and fishnet and fluffies on the legs and all that look had not condensed into such a stereotype yet. So the cybergoth kids were more varied looking. I still remember, I probably shouldn't say his name, even though it wasn't his real name. It was a made up name and it was quite a cute name. But there was one particular guy I still remember who, like, his thing, he would always have his kind of like baggy rave pants, but not like trip chain hung gothy pants. They were more like rave pants. And he'd always have some kind of like weird little cartoon t-shirt on, and the thing that sticks with me about this guy was his dance moves. And I to this day I have stolen some of his dance moves, and to this day I still do them when certain songs come on because I find them fucking hilarious. Maybe I will have to demonstrate at some point because they were fucking hilarious. And there is no way, looking back, there is no way that guy was not on some sort of intoxicant, and I would have been all over him trying to get some had I known that at the age of 16. I'm quite glad I didn't, because I was in no brain shape to handle such a thing at the age of 16. But yeah, so the cybergoths were kind of a more unique little posse, and they had some very cool dance moves. It wasn't, you know, it hadn't, this was the other thing that hadn't condensed into a stereotype, was industrial dance. You know, these days you go to a goth club, certainly in the UK, seemingly in Europe too, less so in America, it seems like, but industrial dance is the dominant style you will see here. You know, all the elbowing and the pointing and all of this, that is what you will predominantly see, more so than the sort of spooky, floaty hands with the trad goth stuff, because trad goth music just does not get played much in goth clubs here anymore. But because the industrial dance thing had not become like, this is how everyone dances yet, you still got people doing really weird shit on the dance floor, and I loved that. There was another guy who was infamously weird. To my knowledge, this guy had nothing wrong with him, but he would always go everywhere with this very dramatic gothic cane, and he would dance around his gothic cane on the dance floor. And you would see way more random shit in a goth club in the early 2000s than now that gothic dancing has become I think the internet is probably to blame, you know, with websites that were around in circa 2010, like Das Club, where it was all about industrial dance competitions, and everyone was learning to industrial dance, and everyone was learning to dance exactly the same. And I would say even in America, with the people doing the trad goth dance, that has become very, very stereotyped too, because of the amount of tutorials and people doing it online, and, you know, baby goths going, oh, this is how you have to dance to be goth. And it's like, no, it didn't used to be that way. It did not. You would fucking go there and you would do whatever felt good, and that was fine. And my own dance style, I feel like in the early 2000s, like the dance style that was natural to me, that just came about naturally to me, was kind of like weird bored stripper. And I feel like over the years that my musical tastes have diversified, my dance style has diversified too. But yeah, in the early 2000s, you just got on the dance floor and you did whatever felt fucking good. And particularly if you were absolutely wasted, you you did whatever felt good. Like, I will never forget getting into this dance off with this gorgeous Swedish guy on the dance floor stage at Eddie's one night. And he declared me the winner after I gestured something a little bit dark that I can't say on here without getting demonetized. But it was, I think we were dancing to Rob Zombie's Living Dead Girl. And there's certain lyrics pertaining to methods of suicide, and I kind of like enacted it, and he laughed his ass off and declared me the winner. And then there was another time that the night actually that the goth club burnt down, about an hour before it burned down, my boyfriend at the time got into a break dance off with some other guy, and I didn't even know this motherfucker could break dance, but he really could. It was the most random fucking thing I've ever seen in a goth club, is this breakdance of, like, it's weird enough getting one kind of wannabe b-boy in a goth club, let alone fucking two of them coming head to head. So weird, so brilliant. That was such a good night until, you know, everything set on fire and the goth club was gone forever. But yeah, anyway. So there was more diversity, I feel like, in a lot of ways. God, even the fucking DIY or die subculture of, you know, the subsection of the gothic subculture these days has become so stereotypical. You know, it has. It's not people making weird fucking belts out of shot glasses and whatever occurs to their weird little minds anymore. It's like, oh, you've got to make a fucking battle jacket with all the fucking stereotypical cliche goth bands on it. And that's always bothered my soul a little bit. It really has, because I feel like if you are going to go to the hassle and the effort and all of that of buying some kind of thrifted jacket and then making all these patches, or buying all these patches and sewing them on and pinning them on and decorating the whole thing, fucking make something that is yours and that you genuinely like and that genuinely screams you. Don't fucking do it by numbers, you know, wrote by numbers. Oh, these are all the goth bands I've got to tick off. I've got to have Susie, I've got to have Bauhaus, I've got to have Sister Mercy, I've got to have Alien Sex Fiend, Virgin Prunes, I've got all, fuck it, no. You don't have to like every single classic goth band. I fucking don't. There are quite a lot of classic goth bands I don't like, actually. There's some of them that I've come to like over the years, but there are some still that I listen to and I'm like, no, I don't get the appeal of this at all. But more than that, I've always revelled in the cheekiness of DIY'd clothes, and also the cheekiness of giving a middle finger to gothic elitism, really. Because I just think it's fucking funny to make some kind of battle jacket, and sure, you stick on like a couple of classic goth band patches on there just to appease the elitists, but then you stick on there something that you love, that is a part of you, but that is completely way out of left field, completely non-goth. In my case, I would probably go for Silver Sun, because they're like the least goth band that I like. I would go for Silver Sun. Maybe I'd go for fucking Oasis. I don't know. The bands I grew up on that I love, that are a huge part of me. And I don't give a fuck if I'm in a goth club and someone's like, oh, that's no good. You can't be here with no Oasis patch on. Ooh, rancid onto proper punk band. Ooh, that's lame. Ooh, fuck you. Get a life. My God, don't be so boring. So no, I hate the fact that particularly younger goths these days, they're getting into the DIY or die thing, which is great, but then they're feeling they have to do it in this really stereotypical way, so that they always come out looking like a very stereotypical death rocker with all the stereotypical bands on there, and it's like, you're not really being creative with this. And that was the whole root of it, was to be creative and create something that you couldn't buy anywhere. And I feel like a lot of the stuff that people make, you could just fucking buy somewhere, because it's all the same bands and it's all the same look. And I'll admit it's a good look. There's a reason that the death rock look is so classic, and that these battle jackets with all these band patches on have stayed the course of time, because it is such a good classic look. I just think, fucking be mischievous with it, man. Throw something interesting in there. Because honestly, some of the best moments I have ever had at goth clubs have been fellow goths being completely mischievous. And a huge tribute to my friend Jazz, who died in 2017, unfortunately. I was never a huge fan of Limp Bizkit, but he has turned me into one. Corruptor personified. He would get DJ slots at goth nights, and he would get behind the booth and do his thing and be a good boy and play some goth tracks for a while, and then out of nowhere you would get Limp Bizkit would come blasting out of the speakers, and to everyone's surprise, this floor full of goths would erupt into more chaos, anarchy and joy than you had seen for the rest of the night. He would come out from behind the DJ booth and leap around and have fun too. And there is so much room for mischief in the goth subculture. I mean, I will say that there is some gothic mischief that I fucking hate, like going to New Year's Eve goth nights and hearing the fucking Novelty Tunes. I hate Novelty Tunes. Come on, man, Gangnam Style, a fucking New Year's Eve 2013, goth club. I just got there. I wasn't even drunk yet. Fucking Gangnam Style comes on. I'm like, what the piss is this? And then all the fucking goths, my fucking people, they're fucking dancing around in the fucking goth, fucking Gangnam Style dance. Fuck off. No, I left. I just got out of there. I drove fucking home, watched the fireworks going off as I was driving home because it was literally midnight. And I feel I probably should just clarify my killjoy attitude to Novelty Tunes at this point, that stereotypically in the UK, goth clubs at New Year's Eve have been this festival of novelty tunes and kind of demi-novelty tunes. So you'd get the Time Warp, you'd get Rock Lobster, you'd get Backstreet Boys, you'd get Gangnam Style or whatever pop culture reference was big at the time. And the problem for me was that for most of my life I drove to goth clubs and I drove back, so I could only have 2 units all night of alcohol, whereas obviously it's New Year's Eve. Most people are plastered, and if you have ever been sober in a club full of drunk people, you know you're not on the same wavelength, and it can get quite wearing. Although I will say there would be some novelty tunes that I would have just dug the shit out of. Like back in that era, I loved The Lonely Island with songs like Jizz in My Pants, I Just Had Sex, I'm on a Boat, things like that. I would have gone ape shit for that kind of stuff. We all have our little weaknesses, and there used to be a club night round here called Dystopia where any random person could get a DJ slot, and many people, just like me, would be mischievous with it, and they would run on their own personal avant-garde tangent of the stuff they wanted to hear in a goth club, which was really quite sweet and quite endearing that they were given space to do this. But obviously you had to also like that music, and oftentimes you'd gone to a goth club, you wanted to hear goth tunes, and some fuckers playing this random shit, and if you weren't into it and you were sober, it could really get under your skin and be really quite bothersome. So I think the perfect DJs were people like Jazz, who knew this is a goth club, like pay respect to that, do put some goth tunes in, but then throw in like the occasional bit of avant-garde nonsense. And I loved it when some of the friends I had when they DJ'd, they would occasionally play stuff like Bull that I was into that no one else had really heard of or particularly liked. And I would just go insane and I would be so happy. And I'd be the only one on the dance floor going completely insane. So like big up to them for playing my silly songs that no one else wanted to hear. We all have our little weaknesses with novelty tunes. But yeah, New Year's Eve at a UK goth club, you basically have to be drunk to enjoy it because the sheer randomness gets quite wearing if you're sober. So, you know, even I do have my limits when it comes to the mischievousness of goth and the things that I will and won't tolerate. But I do think, in general, be mischievous with goth stuff. Like the whole fucking subculture in the first place came together from a commingling of weird fucking influences. You know, old horror movies and weird sparse sounds and weird sparse lyrics and a bit of punk and a bit of industrial and a bit of this, that and the other. It's the commingling of weird shit that makes really unique stuff. I mean, think about people like David Bowie and all the weird random influences he brought together and what a memorable person that made him. I think that is so much more cool and so much more unique than doing goth by numbers. You know, just Googling up or Pinteresting up some sort of look and then just ripping it off wholesale. Like, where is the fun and the creativity? And one could argue the gothic spirit in that. Anyway, this has turned into a rant. So yeah, the goth scene of the early 2000s, obviously at this point, the job I had did not pay well. I was not one of these people out there rocking all the really gorgeous boutique pieces and all of this. You would be seen at a goth club multiple times in the same outfit because you did not have that many clothes. And no one gave a shit about that. Like, there was one guy I knew who literally every fucking goth club night, he was always there in the same t-shirt. And it was just like, well, he's easy to recognise. You know, you weren't snooty and bullshitty about this stuff. because it was a young scene, I guess, at that point, or a younger scene, and so people didn't have the money, so there wasn't this like, oh, you're not wearing snooty brands, fuck you. There wasn't that. It does fucking amuse the shit out of me that all the shit that was like just so lame back then is now so cool. My picture that seems to have spread around the internet quite a bit, with the Christmas tree. And there are so many goth pictures out there like this, because you didn't have a fucking clicky phone with a camera on it. You had a digicam, if that. So the person taking the photo would be your mom before you went out to a goth club, and your mom would always be like, oh, go and stand by the Christmas tree, let's get the Christmas tree, and that'll be nice. So you'd always be with the fucking Christmas tree. You don't see that anymore. Everything is so polished and so Instagrammable now that it's like a different world when you see this stuff. And I guess that's why it's become kind of celebrated. And I would like to say I feel incredibly blessed in being one of the rare, I think, millennials who trod a path in life and stylistics and culture that is still tolerated, sometimes even envied, sometimes even looked at as cool by the younger generation, because like it's been a weird fucking arc for millennials, man. You know, for so many years we were the young ones. Like millennial meant young, obnoxious, lazy teenager. The same way that boomers apply it to Gen Z now. That was millennials, and that was all the shit that got thrown at us. And suddenly it was like, okay, sliding into our 30s, whatever. And then for some reason Gen Z, particularly on TikTok, picked up this really weird obsession with us. And everything we fucking do, from the millennial pause, to the millennial smile, to the millennial heart, to the millennial fucking peace sign, to the millennial grey, to fucking everything we do is millennial something, and they don't like it about us. And it's like, why do they even care? We never gave a single fucking thought to Gen X when we were growing up, apart from the fact that we were like a bit envious of Gen X because they had a lot of songs. You know, that they had fucking Smells Like Teen Spirit was written about Gen X. Limp Bizkit's My Generation. There were like numerous songs about Gen X, and millennials, or Generation Y as we were for a while. We didn't have any of that shit, so we kind of envied their songs, but we didn't give them a fucking thought. We didn't hate on them in any kind of way. So it's weird that we've had all this fucking hate from the boomers, and now Gen X fucking hate us too. And so I do feel kind of blessed in being one of the weirder millennials who is slightly more tolerated by the Gen Z / Zoomer generation. So there's that. That's another tangent. Anyway, yeah, it's fucking hot, man. It's fucking heat wave. My brain is melting out of my ear. My nose is running, and I'm gonna go away now. But thank you for listening. And if you've got any more suggestions for video waffles about gothy things or whatever else, then tell me on Instagram or tell me here, and I will see you soon. Toodle pip. Bye bye.